Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, India's misinformation and deliberate disinformation has become the biggest enemy of the global Sikh community. And it's unwitting Western politicians who often become the proxy mouthpiece for India's Hinduism extremists. So we take a look today at the growing problem affecting the Canadian Sikh diaspora as they battle this growing issue. And meanwhile, we also take another look at India's other dangerous exports, that of organised crime and its targeting of the Sikh community. We have Canadian police's reaction to our question, asking about the Bishnoi gang's involvement. And in more positive news, we have coverage of the opening of the new Jaswant Singh Khalra school in California, as young American school children begin to learn of the extraordinary power of the Sikh philosophical battle against state injustice. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning on this beautiful Monday to all of our viewers out there. Thanks again for all the comments. Keep them rolling. And don't forget that you can go down into the description and find our link tree where you'll be able to find links to the different platforms that Satledge is on, but you can also find out how to support the channel since we still haven't been remonetized on YouTube. So again, you can find how to support us on the link tree there. Thanks for tuning in, and stick around to the end of the show for all of those amazing comments that you send in.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we'll take a look at loads of great comments. So thank you to our wonderful audience for your contributions on that. Right, James, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, we're going to take an in-depth look at, again, the organized crime linked to India here in Canada and how the government at different levels is starting to really make a push towards dealing with this problem. Now, we know that this has been an issue for several years, and it continues to increase. And in certain communities, we've talked about the Peel Regional Police with their recent crackdown and arrest of about 18 individuals linked to different gangs. And most importantly, they keep bringing up the Bishnoi gang out of India. They keep bringing that name up. So we had reached out to the Peel Regional Police to find out if there is a confirmation in terms of the connection to the Bishnoi gang. And we'll just scroll down here. This was their actual response from the Peel Regional Police Department. And what they stated clearly was there have been approximately 20 reported extortion-related incidents in 2025. In some cases, victims reported receiving threats from individuals claiming to be associated with the Lawrence Bishnoi. Investigators are actively working to determine whether any of these incidents are connected to the Bishnoi gang. At this time, no confirmed links have been established, and the investigation is ongoing. So although they have different people who are claiming to be a part of the Bishnoi gang, and of course there are reasons to suspect that there is involvement, they just don't have that confirmation. Now, of course, a lot of people are afraid to speak out, and that would be another hindrance because they can't get that direct tie. Now, it should also be noted that a lot of the criminality and the gangs that are reaching out across Canada, they have a lot of crossover. So although they may be saying the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, they could be a member of another street gang that is actually tied into the Bishnoi gang. So again, it just creates that bit of level of separation. Now, it's not uncommon for the different gangs and the different criminal elements to work together in terms of distribution of drugs or in terms of human trafficking and the like. So again, it just depends. They will sometimes divide up the areas. This gang deals with this sort of crime. This gang deals with that sort of crime. And of course, the extortion and the arsons and other things that we've heard. Now, recently in Surrey, British Columbia and Metro Vancouver, we've had several shootings linked to potentially the Bishnoi gang. And that has, as we spoke about last week, pushed for the city of Surrey's mayor, as well as the province of British Columbia, to try and get the federal government to label the Bishnoi gang as a terrorist group. So here's a statement from the mayor of Surrey, and her name is Brenda Locke. She is very in touch with the Sikh community here, and so is the city council. Now, she went on to say that whether these groups operate locally or internationally, this designation is a critical step in equipping law enforcement with necessary tools to dismantle these dangerous networks and protect our residents and businesses. Now, the violence and intimidation in our that our community faces are unacceptable. And she goes on, talking about the rise in crime, whether it's the extortions, the threats of violence, the shootings, and I'll add in there the arsons as well, because we know that that is another tactic that the Bishnoi gang is very known for. Now, they call this economic terrorism because they are hitting the economy, the local businesses that are being extorted and having to put out sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, this problem that is perpetuating the community and really getting into the South Asian diasporas is that a lot of people are not speaking out. Now, this is not just in Surrey, it's all across Canada. But again, the city of Surrey, the mayor is in a transition where there is a new police force here. So they really are pushing forward to not only incorporate the local police, their investigators and detectives, but also reaching out to the entire lower mainland of Metro Vancouver. And they are teaming up all of the different police chiefs and the departments to work together to try and curb this problem as a group. And then they've also gone as far as trying to trying to bring in the National Police Force, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and their federal enforcement teams that are very specialized in transnational gangs as well. So again, by bringing in this designation as a terrorist group, it just brings a lot more resources to the table, as we've spoken about previously. Now, she wants to see not only that that they are focused on dealing with the issue here, but also ensuring that they are reaching out in Punjabi as well as other languages such as Chinese and Mandarin, because again, it's not just focused to the Sikh community, but it is the one that seems to be really at hand right now and really predominant. So again, they are working to try and bring that together to try and reach out to the communities as a whole. And I'm going to just scroll down an image here, and I'm just going to scroll slowly but fast enough to move through it quickly. But if you want to pause your screen, this is the statement that I just showed, and this time in Punjabi. So they are trying to be, again, multicultural in terms of the languages and trying to reach out to all of the minority communities by putting all of the warnings and the information in various languages, which really helps to reach out further. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of words from politicians, from the police, and others over the last several years talking about this issue. And that is a concern to the community, is that it still seems like enough is not being done to crack down on this problem. And when that happens, of course, you lose that credibility. So if you are in the Surrey area and you have questions or you are concerned about extortion, you can reach out to the police officer, Prajit Kolan, and the numbers area code 236-878-6263, and the email is on the screen as well. So if you are directly impacted or just have questions, you can do that, or reach out to the Surrey Police Service, the RCMP. Now, as I said, it's going at different levels of government. And when we look at this, I'm going to bring up a screenshot here, Angus, and it's actually, you'll see in a minute here how when I say that it's been going on for quite some time, that this is a real issue that needs to be dealt with in today's context. But if you look at, sorry, I just got to pull that one up there. And if you take a look at this memo that was sent out by the provincial government and the Ministry of Public Safety by the province of British Columbia. Oh, wrong one. Sorry, I'll just re-pull that. But what you're seeing here is actually a letter that was sent out in November of 2023, and it addressed the same issue. So when the community says that not enough is being done, obviously they are really able to prove that because of the fact that this memorandum that was sent out, over a year and a half ago. And now it seems like they're in the same boat yet once again. Now here is a more recent one, and I just going to skip past the other one just because we're on a time crunch here. But so right now, the government of Canada and the province of British Columbia have committed over $100,000 to a campaign that is BC Crime Stoppers. And if you're not familiar with Crime Stoppers, essentially that is a nonprofit organization that helps to draw focus on unsolved crimes or on crime problems within communities across Canada. And there's an anonymous tips line that people can use either online or by calling, and they can give tips on certain crimes. They also offer rewards for information leading to the arrest and conviction of individuals as well. So the government has committed $100,000, which is a big step because that actually is much further than they've done in the past. In the past, it's been about education campaigns, but now they're actually putting money into awareness as well. And what I like is that they're actually doing the campaigns in English and Punjabi. So it is, again, they've also done in Chinese and other languages, but it just goes to show that they are taking it seriously, that they are moving forward. They are trying to really capture all communities in terms of dealing with it. So I'm just going to bring up once again the release in Punjabi, and I'll just scroll through it quickly so that anybody can pause their screen and take a look at it, and then you can have that information. But again, I'll just scroll through and you can pause your screen if you want to read this. Again, it's in Punjabi, so this way, if there's any of our audience out there that wants to speak to their relatives about the extortion issue and how to report it or to give some comfort to know that it's being dealt with aggressively now, a lot more so than it has in the past. So that's a very big indicator for the community to feel some type of restored confidence within the system. And again, it's not perfect, but it is definitely moving forward in the right direction. Now, here is a public service announcement, just a quick one that was put out by the Surrey Police Service, and they are in the midst of doing this one in various languages as well.
Extortions are a growing concern for police across Canada. In Surrey, police are working with the community and have increased patrols in targeted areas. If you are the victim of an extortion, if you've received the threat of violence or demand for money, here's what you should do. Don't comply with the demands. Save all correspondence and information and material related to the extortion. That includes voice and text messages. If you believe you have been the victim of an extortion, phone police non-emergency line at 604-599-0502, or in an emergency, call 911. Translation services will be available to you.
So again, they are really pushing both through social media and through traditional television. And in Vancouver, we have a multicultural channel called Omni, and that is both they have both programs in Mandarin and Chinese and Punjabi, in Hindi. So they're really reaching out across all of the levels of community engagement in order to try and stem this problem and to address it, because again, it is a major concern of the community, and not to mention the shootings and other incidents that have been more prevalent over the last year as well. So here's here's a video of the actual Crime Stoppers advertisement that they're putting out.
Criminals are threatening people and businesses for money. This is extortion, and it's happening in BC. If you are being targeted, don't pay. Help is available. Report it to local police. If you have information, call police or stay anonymous by contacting BC Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477 or online at bccrimestoppers.com.
ਅਪਰਾਧੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰੋਬਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਸਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਧਮਕਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਲੁੱਟ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਇਹ BC ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨਾ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਨਾ ਦਿਓ। ਮਦਦ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੀ ਸਥਾਨਕ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਜਾਂ BC ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਸਟਾਪਰਸ ਨਾਲ 1-800-222-8477 ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ bccrimstoppers.com ਉੱਤੇ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਗਿਆਤ ਰਹੋ।
So there you can see, Angus, they're really trying to reach out to all different levels of community, all different members, but also it's important, again, like I was saying just before the videos, is that if you have people who are in your household or relatives, friends, people at the Gurdwaras or elsewhere who may be the victims of extortion or you think may be at risk, make sure that they get the information as well, because a lot of times when the information is out there, it is in English and it fails to make it through to all of the different people that really need to get that information. And have no doubt that even though this has been a message going on for the last several years across Canada, it has really grown exponentially over the last 12 to 24 months, but especially over the last 6 months. So we need to really crack down on it. People need to speak up. And again, if the police are not aware of the extent of it, then it makes it even harder, because their resources get funneled to where there seems to be a big pocket or a big cluster of reports. And if those reports are not coming in, again, the resources are not being diverted to where they should be. So again, don't be afraid to speak out, even if you're reaching out through Crime Stoppers, which is anonymous, to bring concerns, then it is worthwhile. And again, if you have any information on extortion attempts or such, reach out to the federal police, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the BC RCMP, or your local police service. And as I said, there's been a lot of involvement. The city of Delta, the city of Vancouver, the city of Burnaby, Coquitlam, as well as Surrey and Langley, have all partnered up, and all of the police chiefs have been addressing this issue over the last week to week and a half, and they're really looking to keep the movement going for another 60 to 90 days in terms of the education campaign, to try and reach as many people and to saturate that information out there as they possibly can. If you have been witness to any of these events or driving in an area where you may have actually caught stuff on your dash cam, again, you can submit that. There are portals, but you can reach out to either Crime Stoppers or the police. If you want to stay anonymous, you can do that as well, and submit any photos or video that may be relevant, or any statements that may be concerning. You might have seen a plate number but been too scared to come forward. Again, you can do that anonymously, and that's how we're going to work to get much safer communities, Angus.
Yes, I think that really is the key behind this whole story, is get reporting if these incidents happen. I mean, there's a massive drive clearly by law enforcement. This isn't just limited to Canada. Even the US law enforcement, the FBI, have done very similar things. They've gone out there publicly, released these Punjabi statements, Punjabi videos, to say, look, you've got to report this. We cannot do anything about this unless you report it. And of course, the community lives in fear of these people. These people are scary and dangerous. And it does take an enormous amount of courage, but they are being encouraged likewise by law enforcement, and indeed us. Please do report it. It's so crucial that any incident, even however minor, gets reported, because that is the only way that law enforcement can do anything about it, that the situation can change. Law enforcement, and ultimately all the way up the chain to the politicians and the legislators, the people who make the law and change policies, can only do things if they have the data. And this comes back to very plain, simple, boring, dry statistics. They need the statistics. They need to know how widespread these incidents are, how often they're happening, where they are happening. And that comes down to literally anybody in the community who is being targeted in any way, shape or form. And this covers all hate crimes, not just extortion, not just this terrible, real sharp end of it, but all hate crimes. It doesn't matter how minor. please do report them to your local law enforcement, or even online. You can do it online as well. It's very easy. They've made it very easy to report these things because they need this information. So really, it's very much up to you and our audience. If you ever experience anything at any level, get it reported. Don't be afraid of reporting it, and don't be embarrassed about reporting it or ashamed or whatever. Just get it reported, because then all little reports and all the way up to the big reports all get collated by statisticians who put it all together, and they draw patterns. They can work out what actually is going on the ground. That gets reported to the FBI, the RCMP, etc., who in turn can actually publicise this is how bad the problem is. And people often don't even realise how bad the problem is. I mean, even you James, you report there were 20 incidents. Peel police came back to you to say there were 20 incidents in this last year. That's nearly 2 a month. That's once every fortnight. Those are just the reported cases of the Bishnoi gang. Now, you scale that up across the whole of the Sikh diaspora, certainly across North America, here in Europe, that's massive. That is a huge amount. But they don't know unless you report it. So as I say, get it reported. Then they can collate this information, this data. They can work out just how big this problem is. And clearly, this problem is big. And it's only then they can do something about it. They can pour resources into it. They can act upon it and do something about it. In other words, things only ever change, James, if you get out there and act upon it. That's the real message here.
Absolutely. And that 20 was just the Peel Region Police. So, essentially covering Brampton and that community there. And then you have another estimated 25 in Vancouver, or Metro Vancouver, including Surrey. And then, of course, the rest of the country. So, I mean, you're potentially looking at extortions upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars a week, Angus, that are, that are being reported. That's not even bringing in how many are unreported. And I would think that it's much more than those that have been. So with that, next week we'll actually have a sit-down interview with one of our new Surrey police members. And we'll be just talking not only about this, but just about how they're reaching out to the local community, the local diaspora, and actually trying to bring community together of different backgrounds. So again, not just the extortion, but just overall how they're reaching out to the Sikh community with the new police force. So that'll be pretty cool next week. So we'll bring that to you. Other than that, Angus, let's move on to your first story tonight.
Indeed, thanks, James, for that. Very interesting. And yes, my first story, sadly, is again about hate crimes, but the more written down hate crimes, and this really takes the form of misinformation and disinformation. This is a battle that we are forever having to highlight here, sadly, on this channel, because it is so prevalent right across the diaspora. Wherever you are in the diaspora, the community is experiencing hate crimes across every level. And where it becomes really, I suppose, painful, almost emotionally painful, is the fact it's even our very own state actors that are perpetrating the misinformation, the disinformation, these attacks on the community. They're actually coming from politicians, from public figures, because they have become the useful idiots of India, of the Indian extremists. They're just parroting this narrative that just spews out of India, which again is a deep betrayal by our own public servants. And again, I point the finger across the whole of the Western diaspora here, whether it's here in the UK or North America or certainly Europe and down under. It does appear everywhere. Now, one of our correspondents, I'm going to say a public thank you to one of our correspondents who was a regular correspondent to us on the email. This person has sent, this was received recently to a local Gurdwara. Have a look at this picture. And this is, it's a letter that was sent to a Gurdwara in Santa Rosa, California. It reads, "We know you Khalistanis terrorists. Jai Hind to Hindus Hindutva. To Khalistani terrorists, we will blow up your Gurdwara. Vishwa Hindu Parishal Hindutva Jai, or Jai Hindutva." I mean, I laugh because it looks like it's been written by a 6-year-old. But it's just, again, I think it shows the mentality of what we're up against, of what the community is up against. It is up against something very basic, almost very childlike in its naivety. But this is some extremist who's written a letter that says, "We know you Khalistani terrorists. we're going to blow up your Gurdwara. I don't think they understand the sense of irony there, or the sense of hypocrisy. Actually, the Gurdwara is the core of peace and social stability. It is a place where people find sanctuary, peaceful religious sanctuary, and they're threatening to blow it up because you're all terrorists. And I don't think they quite understand which part of that is the terrorist act. So again, but unfortunately, it does lay very, very simple evidence of who the actual terrorists here are. It's not the Khalistan movement. It is this whole bunch of Hindutva extremists. They're the ones threatening to blow up Gurdwaras. So that is just one small piece of evidence that sits in a huge portfolio of evidence of attacks on the peaceful democratic Khalistan movement by the real terrorists, the Hindutva terrorists. Now, I started by talking about how the written word has become this weapon of choice in many ways of the more insidious attacks on the Sikh community, and this really has hit Western media for many years, and we have this constant battle against it. There is a guy in Canada, a guy called Ujjal Dosanjh. He's just written a really powerful and really, I would almost say, libelous piece about the Sikh community, particularly the Khalistan movement, and it was published only a few days ago in the National Post. And now Ujjal Dosanjh, and I had to look up a bit more about this guy and who he was. He's actually the former premier of British Columbia, so he's a very high achieving Indian diaspora individual. He was born in Jalandhar in 1947, so he's getting on in years. He's had a long life. And he moved, as a young man, he moved to the United Kingdom at the age of 17, spent 4 years there learning English, and then eventually emigrated to India when he was about 21, arriving in British Columbia in 1968. Very politically minded, though. His father, and this is, I think, where the clue comes, he got a very early interest in politics, primarily from listening to debates between his father, a follower of Nehru and Indian National Congress, and his grandfather, who's a former British Raj freedom fighter and a socialist. So there's a clue there. He's been very heavily influenced by his father, who was a huge supporter of Nehru, that arch Brahmin, yes, the great Brahmin, the great betrayer of the Sikh community, Nehru. So clearly the roots of his own political opinions were based on listening to his father, basically a supporter of the Brahmins. And ever since arriving in Canada, he's basically been a very politically motivated activist. He became a lawyer, but he also became a prominent moderate Sikh based in Vancouver, and he often spoke out against the Sikh Khalistanis. And in fact, in February 1985, he was actually attacked outside his office by an assailant wielding an iron bar. He was injured. But look at the date of that, February 1985. That is just 8 months after Operation Blue Star, and just a few months, 3 or 4 months after the Sikh genocide. And yet this is the publicised attack on him. Oh, I'm a poor victim. And yet it doesn't put it in context that just a few months earlier, him and his supporters murdered tens of thousands of innocent Sikh men, women and children in the most horrific manner in the Sikh genocide. So now this piece that he wrote in the National Post is actually being pulled apart by Balpreet Singh. Balpreet Singh is the legal counsel for the World Sikh Organisation of Canada. And Balpreet took a look through this article and basically said, this is absolute rubbish. It's not just rubbish. It is not just parroting this fake disinformation narrative that is perpetrated by India. It actually contains our long litany of untruths, misinformation and complete lies, just barefaced lies based on no evidence. And this is coming from a lawyer. This guy has a legal background, this author. This Ujjal Dosanjh, he comes from a legal background, and yet he can put down in writing a complete litany of libel, effectively. So this article written by Balpreet, and it's quite a long article, I'll just cherry pick some of the bits he says, but he said this article was written on the 21st of June in the National Post. It was entitled, "Canada has put up with Khalistani terrorists for long enough." Really? And again, it was just the most evocative, provocative headline. And even the headline is so false in its narrative. And the piece contains several serious factual errors that relies on discredited sources, repeats this disinformation narrative coming out of India, and it doesn't merely offer an opinion, it's actually endangering members of the Sikh community at a time when they're already facing enough problems as it is. And it talks about how Assange has become this consistent and prominent conduit. He's basically a mouthpiece for the Indian state extremists. And over the years, he's repeatedly attacked the community, repeatedly promoted this false narrative that Sikh extremism is on the rise in Canada, which of course it isn't. It's gone the other way. It's actually moved away from a militant background in the Punjab in the 80s, which in itself was a self-defensive movement. It's morphed and evolved into a peaceful democratic movement. That is why it has become so successful and so powerful, and the Hindutva extremists are so afraid of it now, is because it's become peaceful and democratic, yet they are now having to fight back by trying to falsely claim that somehow it is actually extremist and militant, which of course it isn't. And rather than upholding the responsibilities associated with his former role as Premier of British Columbia, this is a guy who was a public servant, but is moving away from the norms and the expectations of being a public servant, in other words, being responsible and following the rule of law. He's now morphed, he himself has sort of morphed into this spokesperson for the government of India, spouting propaganda and disinformation campaigns and deliberately trying to marginalise Sikhs and creating this divisions amongst the communities, particularly amongst the Hindus and the Sikhs. It's reckless, as this article claims. Even the Peel Regional Police, James, as you talked about, they reported about dismantling a major narco-terrorism network in Toronto that Assange claims was linked to the Khalistan movement. And he claims, again falsely, that the proceeds from this drug trafficking was allegedly channeled to funding protests, the referendum, acquisition of weapons, etc. It's nonsense. There is absolutely no evidence. And even Peel Regional Police have confirmed officially and formally there is absolutely no evidence linking any aspect of what was called Project Pelican into anti-India activities or the Khalistan movement. In other words, the whole claim of Assange is absolute lies. It's not true. Even Peel Regional Police have publicly stated it is not true. There is no link between this criminality and the Khalistan campaign. And he often parrots narratives that only appear in Indian state-aligned media, which Canadian government officials themselves have repeatedly warned these are being used as tools of foreign disinformation. And the article that he wrote continues to go on to falsely claim that CSIS testified about Khalistani elements in Canada receiving covert support from ISI, that's the Pakistan Intelligence Agency. How often have we talked about this, James? Again, not true. It's a complete lie. It's been discredited by every possible state institution. It is not true. There are no links between the Khalistan movement and the Pakistan Intelligence Agency. They also refer to the UK's Bloom Review. Again, this is a report about terrorism in the UK that was released a couple of years ago. And again, Assange brings in this Bloom Review as evidence of pro-Khalistan activity being dangerous. But what he fails to mention is this whole section of the Bloom Review was absolutely pulled apart and discredited and rejected widely across the UK by every single Sikh organisation and legal experts across the legal spectrum. For example, the Sikh Federation in the UK actually said at the time, it's an absolute hatchet job on Sikh institutions that actually stand up for human rights and speak out against Indian government abuses. In other words, they're saying, look, this section on the Khalistan movement in this report has basically been written by India. It's just been completely written by India. The very people that the Sikh community and the Khalistan movement are fighting against. Of course it's rubbish. Of course it's completely discredited and untrue. Even the Sikhs in Law Association, this is a group, a high-level group of lawyers in the UK, they are barristers, lawyers, solicitors, judges who live in the UK and operate and practice in the UK. Even their association concluded the review was flawed in both methodology and conclusions and demonstrates a lack of understanding of the Sikh community and renders it unsafe and unreliable for use by any government department. That is a very legal, diplomatic way of saying it's complete and utter rubbish. And yet it appeared in this article written by Dosanjh somehow as evidence of this danger of the Khalistan movement. And the article attempts to link the Khalistan movement to terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Lashkar-e-Taiba, an Islamic terrorist group. Relying again, of course, on Indian media reports and the Eurasian Times, an outlet that's been flagged as unreliable, widely known for publishing India-aligned disinformation. So again, it's quoting sources that align the Khalistan movement somehow with Hezbollah and Lashkar-e-Taiba. I mean, please. I mean, again, it renders me almost speechless. And it continues to say they are components of a larger pattern in which Indian authorities and their proxies abroad attempt to delegitimize Sikh political advocacy by branding it as extremist or criminal. And of course, we do know, for example, many news outlets like the CBC, the Washington Post, Press Progress, and many, many others. And of course, Canada's own Foreign Interference Commission itself, they've all done their job properly and investigated the truth. And each and every single one of those have shown how Indian intelligence services manufacture and export this fake narrative that casts Sikh political demands, particularly the Khalistan movement, as threats to national security or as links to criminality. And it's absolute nonsense. Of course they're not. And as a result, the World Sikh Organisation of Canada has actually written to the National Post and saying, excuse me, would you mind explaining your basis of evidence for this article? And they likewise pointed out all the factual errors and presented their evidence, say this is why this article is absolute rubbish. Surprise, surprise, the National Post has failed to respond. What a surprise. It's an appalling and egregious piece of Indian misinformation narrative, fake narrative designed deliberately to target the Khalistan community. And as part of this overall multilateral attack on the Sikh community by India through its proxy politicians, here's a video, and I was, I have to say, quite horrified when I saw this video. This is a video of a couple of Canadian politicians. These are members of the Canadian Parliament, elected by people, so they have a huge responsibility to, when they stand up and speak to the public, they have a massive responsibility to promote peace, democracy, all those sorts of things. And most of all, above all else, is to speak legally, follow the rule of law, and tell the truth. Again, maybe our expectations of politicians are too high, but is it so much to ask that politicians speak the truth? Watch this video, have a look at this.
Elements of Khalistani terror who terrorize communities and people in their neighborhoods in this country.
Never give in, to never back down, to never surrender, and to never be afraid to name them, whether they are Hamas or Hezbollah or Khalistan or anything else.
So, two politicians, the first who talks just casually about Khalistani terrorists terrorising your communities. Where? When? Where's the evidence? And yet she's just casually thrown this. Of course it's nonsense. Khalistani terrorists don't terrorise communities in Canada or anywhere else. They are peaceful protesters who fly wonderful yellow flags and always have a smile on their face. That is who the Khalistan movement is. It is a peaceful democratic movement. And yet this politician casually throws in this Indian nonsense narrative that somehow they are terrorising your communities. Really? It's a lie. It's dangerous disinformation. And then that second one actually conflates the Khalistan movement with Hezbollah, with Hamas. Yes, those terrorists who murdered babies in that attack on Israel last year or 2 years ago now, they're conflating a known terrorist organisation who is labelled as a terrorist organisation globally. They are conflating Khalistanis with Hamas. I mean, again, it renders me almost speechless, James. I have to say, it is horrifying. And this is why we as a channel, and all our channels across the YouTube, all Sikh channels, Punjabi channels, whichever, we're all aligned in this one single battle to try and get the world to wake up and realise this whole anti-Sikh, anti-Khalistan narrative that's spewing out of India is primarily because they are terrified. India is terrified. They are terrified of the Khalistan movement because it is peaceful, it is democratic, and it is winning the argument. The only way they can fight back against this is to lie, is to spread this absolute nonsense disinformation that it is somehow either criminal or terrorist. It is not. The Khalistan movement is winning the argument because it is peaceful, it is democratic, and it is winning. Simple as that, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, when you look at Yuhal Assange, I mean, there's a lot of issues with this individual, and he describes himself as a moderate Sikh. He's not even Hindu. He says he's a moderate Sikh, which there seems to be a bit of a rift between the moderates in Vancouver and then the Khalistan movement in Surrey. So it's, a bit of a play on the politics of religion there more than it is actually, I think, that is the motivation, is what I'm saying. Now, Yuhal Assange was Premier of British Columbia. He also worked in federal politics. And at the time, back in the 80s, he was a part of a cabinet where the Premier of BC was, prior to him, was ejected because of a big scandal for a Cousineau scandal and paying to have access. And at that time, Yuhal Assange was actually the Attorney General of the province of British Columbia. So he was actually the legal guy who come out and said, well, Glenn Clark should have come clean earlier and told us about it. But he was the Attorney General that should have known what was going on because of the investigation. That, to me, seems, a bit of a disconnect. And then he stepped in when Glenn Clark was gone because of the scandal. He stepped in as premier. He only lasted about a year as premier before he was elected out or replaced in the new election. But it also goes to show that he has that influence. He's worked as a Minister of Health. He's worked as the Minister or Attorney General. He's been the Premier. He's worked in the Cabinet, the federal level. And it just goes to show that, he's still got that traction in terms of his attention seeking in the limelight. And I mean, he's had incidences where, unfortunately, he was attacked outside of his offices at one time, where they broke his hand and hit him with metal pipes or bars or something like that. And I believe it was about 80 stitches in his head. I mean, he has been a very polarizing issue. And I don't say that lightly that he got attacked in making light of the situation, because any violence is horrific, especially what he was subjected to. But I'm just saying that shows the type of polarization he commits or brings to the community. And then the fact that his son was also charged with some assault charges in Ontario, and for some reason the charges got dismissed. And we don't know exactly the level of involvement there. But at the end of the day, let's just hope that his son was innocent of those charges, or at least it wasn't as serious as it was first made out to be. But and then another situation where there was a Molotov cocktail that was left burning on his desk when somebody broke into his constituency office. So again, it shows the type of personality that he is really, he really likes to create conflict and controversy in the communities, which at the end of the day just progresses the separation, Angus. And when it comes to those other two politicians in that video, I mean, they are conservative members. And again, unfortunately, the platform of the conservative members is much like the US, where they want to create fear and anger towards immigrants and against anybody who looks different from them, or if there is, dare I say, political influence from outside of Canada for them to get that message out there. And again, we know how India is involved in foreign interference, so it wouldn't surprise me at all, especially when we know that the Conservative Party has been linked to the government of India when it comes to foreign interference and paid access, Angus.
Indeed, yeah, and it always comes back to that same old question that I ask regularly. Just who actually are the real extremists, the real terrorists in this argument? It's very clear that all I ever see is peaceful, democratic arguments from the Khalistan movement, but all I see coming from these Hindutva India extremists are threats, disinformation, lies, violence, criminality. It's all one way. It's very clear to any objective observer just who are the good guys in this argument and who are the bad guys. So, anyway, let's move on, James, to a little bit more happier, good news story. I'm always happy to report good news stories. And I did report at the end of last week that this new school in the United States, in Fresno, California, is being opened. It has been named the Jaswant Singh Khalra School. It's fantastic news, and it's setting such a huge example and sending such a huge message out to not just the local community, but actually broadly across North America. And it's now been picked up by mainstream news, which again is great news, because even the mainstream news is now picking up on this story and spreading this wonderful message, firstly, of who Jaswant Singh Khalra was and what his extraordinary achievements and extraordinary life brought to the world and did for the Sikh community, but also it actually is sending a message of what the Sikh community is about, what it represents, and of course the suffering that it has endured under the cosh of the Indian state. I'm just going to play, this is a brief report from ABC News in the United States. They covered the ribbon cutting ceremony of the school, and I couldn't put it better than this short article does. Let me play you this, have a look at this.
In West Central Fresno, the official ribbon cutting was held for a brand new elementary school in the Central Unified School District. As Action News anchor Jessica Harrington explains, the name of the school is making history.
The morning started off with a vibrant dance to kick off the festivities. It was standing room only as the Central Unified School District celebrated its newest elementary school set to open this fall. It's the first in the nation to be named after a Punjabi individual, Sikh human rights activist Jaswant Singh Khalra. In 1995, he was abducted, tortured, and killed by the forces he tried to hold accountable.
Jaswant Singh Khalra stood up for justice, even when it cost him everything.
Khalra's family, including his wife and daughter, were in attendance, the district honoring them with a key to the school before officially cutting the ribbon. The Khalra family led the way inside, and Principal Raul Diaz gave the family a tour.
This is our TK classroom.
The hallways were lined with balloons in school colors, leading visitors to classrooms and the future library. The more than 600 future TK to 6th grade students will be known as the Royals, symbolized with a lion. Diaz says it's meant to remind students to be courageous, stand up for what's right, and take care of each other, just like Khalra did.
We want to make sure that our families feel connected and our community feels welcome, and this is going to be a hub of connection for our families.
Empty desks and play kitchens await the smallest students, and down the hall, a welcome sign for the bigger kids. The daughter of the late Jaswant Singh Khalra says she moved to Fresno in 2009 and graduated from Fresno State. She still considers this home.
I'm just honored that the first town I moved into, it has given so much recognition to my family and to my father.
The school board president encouraged staff, administrators, and the community to teach each student to live their lives like Khalra did.
Let us tell the children, speak when even your voice trembles, stand even when your knees shake, love even when the world forgets how.
While the final touches are being put on the building, some of the fields...
How awesome is that? I mean, that is just, it's extraordinary. And I often talk about grassroots campaigning. This is an absolutely perfect example of how you individually, every member of our audience, can impact policy globally, literally, because all that's happened here, the local community, individuals in the community have got together, pushed and promoted and argued locally to rename this school the Jaswant Singh Khalra School, which has been achieved. This in turn has now hit mainstream news. ABC is mainstream. It is watched by a lot of white people who don't know anything about the Sikh community. Suddenly, now they do, because they've seen this news article. Their curiosity is piqued. They are being educated. This is why I often say, get out there, get campaigning, because your voice, united with all your friends, colleagues, community, has an impact. It has an impact on relatively low-level things like renaming a school, but in turn, that has hit mainstream news, which in turn is broadcast to the United States of America, and indeed now around the world, is spreading the message of who the Sikh community are, who extraordinary individuals like Jaswant Singh Khalra are or were, and what they achieved, but why they achieved it. And again, it's subliminally spreading the message of why the Sikh community, and particularly the Khalistan movement, are fighting so hard for their own sovereign nation, is to escape this cosh, this bullying, this intimidation intimidation, this transnational oppression from India. That's what it's all about. It's escaping this oppression from the Indian state. That's, again, the message that is subliminally being spread out. So people are being educated why the Sikh community are out there publicly campaigning, why the Khalistan movement exists. So, James, there you go, a prime example hitting the mainstream news. I think it's fantastic news.
What a moment of honor for the family. I mean, you know, everything that he had tried to achieve in life and everything that he achieved through death even, you know, to be honored that way, I think was really nice to see the smiles on their faces and the sense of pride in the family, but also in the students, Angus, and to bring the lion and, you know, the royals into that in terms of their mascot and their, you know, I just think that it really encourages a lot of people to understand what Sikhi is all about and what Mr. Khalra was about. So I think that it has hit, it's resonating with a lot of minority communities, but also with the mainstream community as well. So congratulations to the family, and what an honor that is, Angus.
Absolutely, and as you rightly point to, the symbol, the mascot of the school, the Singh, the lion. I mean, every kid's going to go through that school and come out proud to be a Singh, effectively, proud to be a lion. And again, it's all very subliminal, but very, very effective. And it's sending out this subliminal message of how good the Sikh community are, what they contribute to society, and likewise, again, by extension, that the suffering that they have endured as a community and why they are so active campaigning about their community and campaigning particularly against the Indian oppression. So, but anyway, well done to the community in California. That is a fantastic achievement, and good luck to all the kids that go through the Jaswant Singh Khalra school in Fresno. Right, James, on that note, we're well over time, so we're going to have to rush through our comments as always, sadly. And a couple of our regulars start us off with talking about the Kanishka, the Air India bombing. Hat B says, yeah, this is exactly how Indian governments infiltrate the Sikh community to damage the Khalistan movement after those terrible genocides in 1984. And as you rightly say, India always sacrifices innocence for a false narrative. Well, I would just change that. So it's not just India, it is the Brahmanical elite. It is those who control India, because as I often say, there is just as many Hindus suffering under their kosh, a lower caste suffering under the Brahmanical control of India. So I'd say it's just the Indian ruling elite always sacrifice innocents, including Hindus, Muslims, Christians, everybody, and Sikhs, for a false narrative. TC responds, it is unforgivable. You're absolutely right. And you use this word portfolio. It is part of this huge portfolio of evil. That's a good description, that is already perpetrated and is still being perpetrated against the Sikhs, both in Punjab and internationally. Why? We know why, apart from just the historic reason. There's the current reason, which is becoming more and more powerful, is because the Khalistan argument is winning. They are winning the argument. The Khalistan movement is marching with huge growing momentum forward. It's doing it peacefully, it's doing it democratically, and it is highlighting the difference between that and what the Indian state are up to, which is criminality, is terrorism, it is murder, it is oppression. That is what the Indian state are doing, but the Khalistan movement are winning just through simple, peaceful, democratic protest, James.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. It's about the democratic process, because in order to achieve it and to be recognized on the international stage, it's going to take a lot of support from the international community. And if you are to do it democratically and peacefully, then you're much more able to bring on the international support of other world leaders, Angus.
Indeed, and specifically about the actual Kanishka bombing, Narinder Singh says most certainly Indian and Canadian intelligences know very well who's responsible, but they don't want to reveal why. We all know why. Well, of course, the Indian intelligence agency won't reveal why, because it was probably them behind it, and CSIS certainly don't want to mention it because it might reflect a little bit badly on Canada because they've known about it, and diplomatically it would cause literally, or not literally, metaphorically, a diplomatic explosion if and when the truth comes out that it was India behind it. And Mukhtar Singh wraps it up by saying, knowing India is a double snake, yet leaders of certain countries are still sucking up to India. Why? The morality of these shameless leaders is at stake indeed. And I think this is the big question, James. Why on earth are we still entertaining Narendra Modi shaking his hand globally, and yet we're still not calling out India for what it is actually up to behind the scenes?
As they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Angus. I don't know what the thought is there, but again, when Khalistan develops those diplomatic ties to the rest of the world, maybe they'll be able to finally get some information. But, you know, why isn't it being released now is the big question, whether it has to do with the Air India or if it has to do with some of the other information not being released about foreign interference and transnational repression. So.
Absolutely, and we ourselves, we'll just keep pushing and pressuring for this investigation into the Air India. What we claim, what we believe, like many in the Sikh community and outside the Sikh community, believe is a false flag effort on behalf of Indian intelligence. KJB Tube, for example, says in the 80s and 90s, the government of India's hands were drenched in the bloods of thousands of Sikhs. Of course, the extrajudicial killings, which were enormous, a whole generation of young Sikhs murdered in cold blood by Punjabi police in the 80s and 90s. So what does it matter that a few people die on the Air India Flight 182? Yeah, similar false flag operations continue even today. And they're calling peaceful Khalistanis the terrorists. Shame, shame, shame. Yes, James, we all know who the real terrorists are. It's very clear.
Absolutely, and you look at what could have happened if Project Shanti had moved forward and progressed and been realized. I mean, it could have been so much worse than it already was, and it was devastating as it did happen, Angus.
Indeed. So as we often say, we know who the real terrorists in this argument are. Right. Now, in a section that I almost wanted to call Flatterer's Corner rather than Critics' Corner, we sometimes get these lovely comments, and I think they are slightly what we say in English, tongue-in-cheek. They would say, probably taking the mick a little bit. But Harjeet Rosha, I love this comment. I always enjoy your show, Mansi. Well, we certainly enjoy your comments. You both are very, very intelligent and close to being genius. Why I say close? Because in your opinion, a full genius either ends up in jail or in a mental asylum. Well, James, I think I have no answer to that one.
A mental asylum, are we talking the physical structure or just a crazy marriage?
Indeed, I certainly would say we're probably a very long way from being geniuses, but the epithet is very much appreciated. Thank you, Harjeet Rosha. And stay safe. I love this one. I can sense Angus and James must have been absolute legends back in their youth. Lots of emojis, including a guitar. Well, I can't deny, yes, even as a young man, I did dream about being a rock star. The only problem was I couldn't actually play the guitar or sing, but that doesn't matter. It's all about the attitude. Everyone shines in their time. Keep us proud. Thank you, stay safe for that. We will do our very best to keep you all proud, James.
Absolutely, and thank you for all the kind words to all of our viewers out there. We really do appreciate it, and it just gives us the validity of continuing with the program and that you're supportive of it. So thank you.
Indeed, I do love these comments because, as I say, they are slightly tongue-in-cheek, but they always give us a great laugh when we read them. They're very much appreciated. Yeah. And Balkar Singh Dil says, hello, very good struggle, with best regards. Well, thank you for your comment. Indeed, the word struggle, it is a struggle, it's a battle, it's a fight. There are many ways you could describe this, but it is a very good struggle. It is a very worthy struggle. It is a worthwhile struggle because we know, James, we are in the right.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that name sounds familiar. I don't know why.
And, well, Avtar Dylan, I think he's based in the UK, your word is actually, it's not so much a struggle, it's all about our compassion and support. It puts it, it's not just a fight, a physical battle and a verbal battle. It is also about compassion and support, and I think that is very reflective of Sikh philosophy. Sikh philosophy is very much founded on compassion and selfless service. It is support for those needing it. Well, hopefully James and I are doing our own in our own small way, our own little bit of savour, our own selfless service, hopefully with a bit of compassion and support, James.
Absolutely, and it doesn't end there. We just keep doing our best, and everybody out there keeps doing theirs, and that's what makes the world happen, buddy.
Indeed, and to sign off for the day, we have Mastan Singh Dulai, who says, of course, as we always conclude, because there can be no other conclusion, the only solution is a free Khalistan. And peace lover, no matter what, Khalistan is a reality. Sikhs will achieve it. Indeed, they will. As you say, thanks to the West for supporting the right people. The key word there is right, because yes, the Khalistan movement is in the right. It is winning this argument through simple logic, because it is on the right side of the argument, and it is doing that through very simple, peaceful, democratic means, James. That is why it's winning the argument.
Absolutely, and the truth always prevails.
Indeed it does. That is why, as you rightly say, Khalistan is coming. It is an inevitability. It will come. Patience. Keep up the good fight, because we are in the right. But on that absolute right note, we must bring Perspectives to close for another day. Please don't forget to keep these comments coming in. Thank you for all of you who have commented. We do read every single one. We do appreciate every single one. Thank you. And thank you, of course, to our correspondents who have emailed us directly with all sorts of snippets of interesting information and articles that you want to bring to our attention, which has been very much appreciated. Thanks to each and every one of you. You know who you are. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.